Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The blood on the onesie. Jake Morgan had changed hundreds of onesies in the last 2 weeks. But this one stopped him cold. It wasn't spit up. It wasn't formula. It was red, dried, right near the collar. His stomach flipped. He sniffed it. Metallic. Blood. "Emily," he called out, holding up the tiny white cloth like it was evidence at a crime scene. She didn't answer. He heard the shower running upstairs. The baby cooed in the bassinet, unaware. Jake stared at him. This tiny, perfect boy, and something deep in his chest twisted. The first time he held him, tears streamed down his face. He never expected to love anything like this. But now he couldn't look at him the same. Not after last night. Not after what he overheard. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop. But he'd come home early. Emily was on the phone, quiet, intense, her voice shaking. "He thinks it's his, he'll never know." That line had punched him in the ribs. Jake didn't breathe. He crouched behind the hallway wall, frozen. Her voice cracked. "No, I didn't tell him. He can't handle the truth, especially since it's you." Jake stayed there, sweating bullets. The shower water finally shut off. He dropped the onesie back in the hamper like it burned him. Was she talking about someone else? Was it what it sounded like? He looked at the baby again. Same blue eyes. But not Jake's nose. Jake's hands clenched into fists. He needed proof. He needed truth. And if what he thought was real, if this baby wasn't his, who was the father? Emily used to sleep like a stone. Now she jolted awake at 3:12 a.m., whispering into her phone, always facing the window. Jake pretended to be asleep. "I miss you too," she whispered one night. "We'll talk soon, not over the phone." She slid her phone under the pillow. Jake's chest felt like it might explode. He waited. He timed her breath, then slowly turned, eyes still shut, and reached under her pillow once her breathing deepened. Her phone was locked. Thumbprint only. He tried her index finger. Nothing. Then he hovered her thumb over the reader. Click. He was in. No recent texts. No call log. No photos. All wiped. Jake opened the Notes app. Empty. But her recently deleted folder? It had one file named Names. He clicked it. It was a list. First names. Random ones. Except one. Thomas. Jake's father. He dropped the phone. It clattered on the hardwood. Emily stirred. Jake pretended to roll in his sleep. The room was too quiet. His own heartbeat was too loud. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. She made French toast. Kissed his cheek. He felt sick. Jake watched her move through the kitchen like a stranger. Same woman. Same smile. But everything about her was suddenly calculated. Posed. He took out the trash just to breathe. While outside, he searched home DNA test kit on his phone. It shipped overnight. He wasn't going to ask. He was going to know. Because if what he feared was true, if that name on the list meant what he thought it did, then this wasn't just cheating. This was betrayal of blood. The backyard was quiet, moonlight brushing over the fence as Jake lit his cigarette with trembling hands. He hadn't smoked in 5 years. But tonight, his lungs didn't matter. Thomas Morgan, his father, retired firefighter, hero in the community, the man who taught him to shave, to throw a punch, to never lie. Jake exhaled hard, watching the smoke drift toward the stars. He replayed Emily's words over and over. "He can't handle the truth, especially since it's you." He hadn't wanted to believe it. But once you hear that voice crack, once you see a name like that in her deleted files, something in you just breaks. He remembered the cookout. 3 months ago, Emily laughing at his dad's joke. Too loud. Too long. He remembered her brushing ashes off Thomas's shoulder. "You're strong for your age," she teased. He'd thought nothing of it. Now, every smile looked different in hindsight. Jake ground the cigarette out on the stone wall. He walked inside. Emily was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. The baby monitor glowed soft blue on the side table. He stared at her, the mother of his son. Or maybe not. He opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, sat at the table. And he waited. Not for her to wake up. Not for answers. For the test kit. The truth. And when it came, if it confirmed what he already knew, he wouldn't just leave. He wouldn't just confront. He would ruin them both. They took something sacred from him. His marriage. His bloodline. His peace. So now he had one question, burning hotter than the cigarette ever could. How do you destroy two people who taught you how to love them? Jake didn't sleep that night. The baby stirred twice. Emily snored lightly. And Jake just lay there, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan. At 5:07 a.m., Emily began talking in her sleep. Wait, we shouldn't. No. Jake turned his head slowly. Her face was tense, twisted. She was sweating. I told you, she mumbled. He thinks it's his. You said it didn't matter. Jake sat up, heart in his throat. You said we were careful, she whispered. He leaned closer, holding his breath. Then, softly, like a knife sliding under a rib, I hope he never finds out it was his father. Jake blinked. Once. Twice. He stood, walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and vomited. His hands shook against the sink. He looked up at his reflection and didn't recognize himself. What the hell was this? Was this real? He walked back out, slowly, quietly. Emily turned in her sleep and let out a peaceful sigh. Like nothing was broken. Like the world hadn't tilted off its axis. Jake looked down at her. Looked hard. And in that moment, a cold clarity settled in his chest. She was gone. The woman he married didn't exist anymore. Maybe never did. This wasn't going to be a fight. This wasn't going to be a confrontation. This was going to be war. And she had no idea it had already started. It showed up in a plain white box. No branding. No flair. Just a barcode and Jake's name. He stared at it for a long second on the porch before picking it up. It was almost poetic. The thing that would blow up his entire life fit in the palm of his hand. Inside, 2 swabs. Instructions. A prepaid return label. He read it twice, then went upstairs to the nursery. The baby was wide awake, little fingers grabbing at the air. Jake smiled, sadly, and reached in. Hey, buddy, he said quietly. Let's find out who you are. He used the swab gently, carefully. The baby squirmed but didn't cry. Jake did the second swab on himself. The whole time, his hands felt like lead. He sealed the package and just stared at it. Like maybe, if he waited long enough, it would disappear or scream the answer out loud. But it didn't. The next morning, he dropped it at the mailbox like he was dropping off a bomb. Emily walked into the kitchen in a robe, hair messy, sipping coffee. Sleep okay? She asked. Didn't, Jake replied, eyes locked on her. She smiled. You should nap when the baby naps. Jake nodded slowly. Yeah, maybe. She kissed his cheek and walked off. Jake didn't move. He just looked at the baby monitor. He'd mailed the truth. Now all that was left was waiting and deciding what to do when the truth came back to kill what was left of him. 3 days later, the email hit his inbox at 4:12 p.m. Subject: DNA results ready. Jake's hands hovered over the trackpad. He didn't move. Didn't blink. Click. The page loaded. 2 names. 2 percentages. Jake Morgan. 0% match. Thomas Morgan. 99.97% match. His world stopped turning. There wasn't a scream. No shattering glass. No collapsing to his knees. Just silence. A deep, cold silence that hollowed him out from the inside. He closed the laptop. He walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it slow. Emily was folding laundry. Humming. Light, happy, like a sitcom wife. Jake watched her. He imagined flipping the table, screaming the results, watching her crumble. But no, that wasn't justice. That was drama. He wanted damage. The kind you don't recover from. He texted his contact at the talk show. Ready? I'll go on. They had reached out weeks ago after a viral clip of his firefighter hero story. He had declined back then. Not anymore. He sat down at the table, stared at the baby monitor again. The baby blinked up at the camera. Innocent. Unknowing. Jake's jaw clenched. This wasn't the kid's fault. But Emily? And Thomas? They were going to bleed. Not with fists. Not with shouting. With facts. Cold, public, undeniable. Jake picked up his phone. Yeah, he said into the receiver. Let's go live. Jake watched his father from across the grill, beer in hand, casual as ever. Thomas was telling some story about his academy days, a crowd of neighbors hanging on his every word. Emily laughed at the punchline, hand brushing his arm in that same easy way. Jake stood stiff, arms crossed. He didn't blink. Everything felt louder now. The sizzle of burgers, the laughter, the ice clinking in glasses. All of it gnawed at his skin. He caught Thomas's eyes. The man gave him a nod, lifted his beer like, "Cheers, son." Jake smiled. The kind of smile you give right before you burn down someone's world. Thomas turned back to the crowd. Jake's hand tightened around his soda bottle. He didn't trust himself with anything stronger. "Want another burger, hon?" Emily asked, stepping beside him. He looked at her. That same face he once wanted to grow old with. The one he had kissed under fireworks, held in hospital rooms, defended against the world. Now he didn't even recognize it. "I'm good," he said flatly. "You sure? You barely touched your plate." "I'm good." She looked at him a little longer than she should have. Her smile wavered, just a fraction, like she sensed something shifting. Jake turned to walk away. "Need to check the baby monitor." She watched him go, confused. Jake didn't care. Back inside, he opened the fridge, let the cold air hit his face. He counted slowly. 1, 2, 3. The rage was right there, just beneath the surface. But he wouldn't explode. Not yet. Because smiles can be weapons. And tonight, he'd smiled at both of them. The war had officially begun. Jake stood in his garage with the door down and his phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, I'll be on camera," he said. "No, I'm not disguising my voice. I want them to see my face." The producer on the other end hesitated. "Just making sure." "This is a lot, Jake. Public DNA exposure, naming your father and wife, ex-wife," Jake corrected. "You haven't filed yet. I will after the episode airs." A pause. "Okay, we'll book the segment. You'll get a prep call this week. You're sure about this?" Jake's jaw set. Dead sure. He hung up and stared at the corkboard in front of him. Photos, documents, texts he'd printed, even a screen capture of the DNA results. Red string connected names like a cop show murder board. This wasn't revenge. This was revelation. He moved with purpose now. Cleaned out the baby's room. Stored the toys. Removed his name from the pediatrician records. He didn't want anything in this house that could be used against him. His lawyer had warned him, custody fights got nasty. But this wasn't going to court. This was going to air. A knock at the garage door startled him. Emily peeked in, holding a laundry basket. "You okay?" she asked. Jake blinked. "Yeah, just organizing." She stepped in. "You've been out here a while." He turned, masking everything. Needed some air. She studied him. "You sure you're not mad at me? You've been distant." Jake shrugged. "You ever lie to me, Emily?" Her eyes flinched. "What?" "Just wondering," he said coolly. She let out a nervous laugh. "What kind of question is that?" "Just the kind a man asks when he's trying to figure out what's real." And with that, he walked past her, leaving her alone in the garage. The studio lights were hotter than Jake expected. He adjusted the mic clip to his collar. The host, Chelsea Voss, gave him a warm smile from across the couch. "You ready?" she asked. Jake nodded once. "Born ready." The cameras rolled. Chelsea turned to face him, voice smooth as butter. "Today's guest is Jake Morgan, firefighter, new father, and now, a man with a shocking story about betrayal and bloodlines." The monitor behind them lit up with a family photo. Jake, Emily, the baby, and Thomas. Jake's stomach twisted, but he didn't show it. "Jake," Chelsea said, "tell us what happened." He cleared his throat, looked straight into the camera. "My wife had a child. A beautiful boy. I was told he was mine. I believed it." He let the silence hang. But he wasn't. "I found out through a DNA test that the father of that baby is my own father." The crowd gasped. Chelsea blinked hard. "You mean, your wife had an affair with my father?" "Yes." Murmurs erupted off camera. Jake reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the envelope. "Here's the test. Certified. Unedited." Chelsea hesitated, then took it, flipped through the papers. Her eyes widened. I'm honestly speechless." Jake looked directly into the lens. "Emily, Thomas, I hope you're watching." The room went still. "I gave you both everything. You gave me a lie wrapped in a nursery. So here's your truth. Live and permanent. Chelsea leaned forward. What do you want people to take away from this? Jake's voice went ice cold. Don't trust titles like wife or father. Trust actions. And when people take your life from you, don't beg for it back. Make sure they never forget the cost. The audience broke into applause. Jake didn't smile. He just waited for the commercial break. Because the show wasn't over. Not yet. Emily's face was pale as the studio lights faded to black. She stood backstage, watching the monitor, frozen. The words, "I hope you're watching," echoed in her head like gunfire. She wasn't supposed to be here. She came to ambush Jake post-interview. She wanted control, but he beat her to it. The assistant producer whispered into a headset, then glanced her way. Emily stepped back into the shadow of a curtain. The crowd's stunned applause still rattled through the walls. People didn't clap for truth anymore. They clapped for scandal. She turned and left. Her phone buzzed. Once, twice, then nonstop. Group chats. Instagram tags. Missed calls. The story was everywhere already. She got into her car, hands shaking. Her chest tightened as she looked at her reflection in the mirror. Smudged mascara. Hollow eyes. She didn't recognize herself anymore. Then her phone lit up with a name she hadn't seen in weeks. Thomas Morgan. She stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because she knew what was coming. Jake had detonated the bomb, and it landed squarely in both of their laps. Jake sat alone at his kitchen table, scrolling. The clip from the show had been posted barely an hour ago. Already over 2.1 million views. Hundreds of thousands of comments. _ this guy is a hero. _ betrayal level. Biblical. His dad. That's evil. Emily and Thomas need jail. He didn't reply to a single one. Didn't like or share. He just read. Then he got a message from someone he hadn't heard from in years. Danny, bro. I saw the clip. I'm sorry. If you ever want to grab a beer, hit me. Jake stared at the message for a long time. Danny was his high school best friend, someone who disappeared right around the time Jake got married. One betrayal had made him question every relationship. Now, it felt like the world had spun back around and seen him. But he also knew how fast the internet moved. In a week, something else would replace his story. A new scandal. A new broken family. He wouldn't stay relevant. But his story would. Because he'd made sure of it. He opened his laptop and pulled up a folder labeled Phase 2. Inside, voicemails, old texts, photos, some dated as far back as 5 years. A paper trail no one else had connected. He wasn't done. Not until they were completely exposed. Thomas tried to act unfazed. He stood at the bar of his country club, nodding to familiar faces who were now giving him too long glances and awkward smiles. The bartender slid a scotch his way. Rough morning, Chief? Thomas smirked. Media circus. All nonsense. But even his voice cracked. His phone buzzed on the counter. Incoming call. Mary, Jake's mom. He ignored it. Took a sip. Then it buzzed again. And again. Texts. Headlines. People talking behind their hands. He walked out, scotch in hand, into the parking lot. Sun blazing overhead. Sweat forming fast. That's when he saw the poster. Stapled to a street lamp just outside the club, the hero who slept with his son's wife. Watch the interview now. QR code. Jake's face. Emily's blurred out. Thomas tore it down with a shaky hand. A car slowed near him. Teenagers in the backseat pointed. Hey, that's him. One yelled. The dad from the video. Laughter followed. Thomas froze. Rage flushed his face. He looked down at the torn paper, fingers trembling. This wasn't just shame. This was erasure. His reputation. His legacy. Burned to ash. And Jake? Jake was just getting started. Jake didn't pack the baby's clothes. Couldn't. He stood in the nursery doorway, one hand resting on the crib rail. The pale blue walls still had decals of little stars. He'd painted them himself. Now, they felt like a joke. The mobile above the crib spun lazily, creaking just enough to sound like a whisper. Jake opened the closet and stared at the tiny shoes, the unopened diapers, the framed photo of Emily holding the baby in the hospital. He took the photo out, snapped it in half, then tossed it into the box with the rest of the nursery items. He didn't cry. That part of him had dried up somewhere between the DNA results and the studio lights. Downstairs, movers shifted boxes. Jake had sold the house to a divorced couple with no kids. Funny how fast things change. His lawyer had already prepped the documents. The house would be gone by next week. He reached for the final drawer. Inside, the birth certificate. He held it like it might bite. His name was still listed as father. He folded it, put it in an envelope, and sealed it with tape. Later, he'd send it to his attorney, with a note to change it once the truth was legally processed. He placed the envelope on the kitchen counter, right next to the house keys. The walls felt bare now. Too quiet. Jake looked around one last time. Then he walked out, without turning back. Jake sat across from his attorney, Will Branson, in a glass-walled office that overlooked downtown. Will tapped the folder on his desk. We have everything. Paternity test, marriage license, the talk show footage, and more than enough evidence of emotional fraud. Jake nodded, arms crossed. Will continued, we're filing for divorce on grounds of adultery and emotional distress. You'll also petition for custody of the child pending a new DNA result. Jake's brow furrowed. Why? The kid isn't mine. Will leaned forward. Because technically, you're still listed as the legal father. Which means until a judge says otherwise, you're liable for child support. If we don't get ahead of this, Emily could use that to bleed you dry. Jake blinked. She's the one who lied. Doesn't matter to the system, Will said. The courts care about what's written on paper. You want clean separation? We file now. Jake's fists clenched under the table. File it? Will nodded. I'll draft the initial hearing for 2 weeks from now. Before Jake could stand, Will added, there's something else. He slid over a printed screenshot. A Reddit thread. Jake read the title. My husband exposed me on live TV. Should I tell my side? It was Emily. He recognized her phrasing instantly. Jake narrowed his eyes. She's spinning it. Already started, Will said. Public sympathy. She's claiming emotional abuse. Says the baby's real dad manipulated her during a dark mental period. Jake stood, teeth grinding. Let her try. Will lean back, calm. She will. But we've got receipts. Jake turned to leave. Then it's time to use them. Jake sat at the old desktop in his apartment, scrolling through the external hard drive he pulled from the hallway closet. It was dusty, years old, but it held every backup from his phone and email since 2018. He didn't want memories. He wanted patterns. He found one fast. Emily had used the same phrase in dozens of emails to different people. Let's keep this between us. Buried in one archive folder, he opened a set of audio recordings from voice memos. One caught his attention. Voice memo. December 14th, 21. Emily click. I can't believe he still doesn't know. I thought he'd pick up on it by now. I mean, Thomas is here all the time. God, if Jake ever found out, I think he'd lose it. Silence. Then, laughter. He still thinks the baby's his. Which is hilarious because Thomas and Jake paused the file. The silence in the room rang louder than her voice. He clicked into another folder, photos greater than 2021, summer. Pool party. BBQs, cookouts. And there it was, a candid shot of Thomas and Emily standing a little too close, half hidden behind the shed. He remembered that day. He'd gone inside to get beer. They were alone for maybe 5 minutes. Apparently, that's all they needed. Jake copied the audio, screenshots, and folder into a new zip file and renamed it Emily_evidence_final. He uploaded it to his cloud drive. Then he opened his email, wrote one sentence to the producers at the network, and attached the folder. Subject, follow-up segment, proof of long-term affair. Message, you wanted the full story. Here it is. The courtroom was cold, too clean, too quiet. Jake sat at the plaintiff's table, a suit hugging his broad frame, sleeves rolled just slightly. His eyes never left the other side. Emily. She wore a black dress, simple and conservative. Her hair was curled, makeup light. Like she was playing the grieving widow of a man who hadn't died yet. She wouldn't look at him. Her lawyer whispered in her ear. She nodded slowly, lips pressed tight. Across the aisle, Thomas sat in the back, in plain clothes, no uniform. His face held no shame, no panic. Just that same cold, unreadable look Jake used to admire. Now it made him sick. The judge entered. All rise. Jake didn't flinch. The case was procedural, a hearing to establish temporary orders during divorce proceedings. But it was the first time all three of them were in the same room since the truth detonated. "Mr. Morgan," the judge said, "are you confirming you are not the biological father of the child in question?" Jake stood. "Confirmed. I have DNA results. Exhibit A, filed last week." "And Mr. Morgan," she turned to Emily, "do you contest these results?" Emily's voice was low. "No, Your Honor." Jake sat down slowly. That was it. No denial. No fake tears. No deflection. Just quiet defeat. The judge glanced between them. "Pending further hearings, paternity is voided. Legal father status will be removed pending recertification. Custody will be reassessed." Jake exhaled. Not in relief. Just in release. The judge dismissed them. As people filed out, Emily looked back. Just once. Their eyes met. Jake stared through her like she was already gone. Because she was. That night, Jake lay in bed staring at the ceiling, but the baby's cry echoed in his head like a siren he couldn't shut off. He hadn't held the kid in 10 days. Didn't even know where Emily had taken him. Her lawyer wouldn't disclose the new address until legal visitation was resolved. But it didn't matter. He wasn't the father. Still, the baby's soft whimper haunted him. He remembered that night in the hospital. The moment they handed him the newborn, pink and swaddled, eyes barely open. Jake had cried without shame. He remembered whispering, "I got you, little man." Always. Now that promise echoed back like a cruel joke. He sat up, rubbed his eyes. The silence was brutal. He got up, opened the fridge, grabbed a beer. Then stopped. There was a pacifier in the junk drawer. One Emily had tossed there months ago when they were reorganizing. Jake picked it up, thumb running over the rubber. Then he slammed the drawer shut. He couldn't keep looking backward. But his chest still ached like the baby was his, like the bond was carved deeper than biology. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello." A woman's voice. Gentle. Nervous. "Hi. Is this Jake Morgan?" "Yeah." "Who is this?" I work at the daycare your son used to go to. Emily came in today. She said some things that didn't sit right. I think you should know. She told staff not to let you near the baby. Said there was a court order, but I didn't see any paperwork." Jake's jaw tightened. "There's no order." "I didn't think so. That's why I'm calling." Jake's voice dropped. "Thank you." He hung up. The war wasn't over. Emily was trying to vanish. And Jake wasn't going to let her. By the time Jake walked into his favorite old bar, whispers had already beat him there. The place was half full, faces he knew, and some he didn't. At the corner booth sat Ryan and Kelsey, his old friends from Fire Academy. Ryan gave him a hesitant nod. Kelsey looked away. Jake walked up, calm but heavy. "Room for one more?" he asked. Kelsey sighed. "Jake, I don't know if this is a good idea." Jake tilted his head. "Why?" Ryan looked uncomfortable. "Look, man, the video, it was intense. And I get you're hurting. But dragging your whole family through national TV? That was cold." Jake blinked. "Cold? You didn't just out Emily," Kelsey added. "You nuked your dad. The guy who put you through training. Who vouched for you after the suspension in 19. Jake stepped back slightly. That old wound hadn't been mentioned in years. "Suspension was dropped," he said. "And he vouched because he had to. He covered his own ass." Kelsey stood. "Maybe. But you didn't need to destroy everything like that. People are uncomfortable. You made it a circus." Jake looked at both of them, expression unreadable. "Good," he said flatly. Kelsey blinked. "What?" "I wanted them uncomfortable." He leaned in. "You think this was about going viral? About ratings? I lost a marriage. A child. I got played by two people who said they loved me, and now you're worried about optics." Ryan opened his mouth, but Jake didn't let him. "Choose your side. Just don't pretend it's neutral." And with that, he walked out, leaving their silence behind him. Because in war, you find out who your real friends are. And tonight, Jake was starting to count the losses. Jake hadn't expected the call. He was at a gas station, half distracted, watching his windshield get sprayed by automatic brushes, when his phone lit up. Unknown. Network HQ. He stared at it for a beat. Then answered. "Jake Morgan. Speaking. This is Melissa Crane from True Talk Network." I'm the executive producer for Exposed and Unfiltered. Jake wiped condensation off the window. Okay, we saw your segment with Chelsea. It's gone national. Millions of shares. People are calling you brave. Brutal, too. But mostly brave. Jake didn't say anything. She continued, we want you to consider hosting a follow-up episode. Your story opened up a discussion. Betrayal, truth, family fallout. People relate to it. Jake exhaled slowly. You want me back on? No. We want you in front of the mic hosting. Telling your side in inviting others who've lived through something similar. We'll compensate you. Executive level. He leaned against the door of his truck, eyes narrowing. A few weeks ago, he was a firefighter with a family. Now, a media brand wanted to build a show around his pain. Jake didn't trust easily anymore. But he understood platforms. What's the catch? He asked. We'll give you creative control. You call the shots. But you have to go deep. Raw. No holding back. Jake looked at himself in the mirror. His reflection stared back like a man already stripped bare. I'll think about it, he said. Think quick. The spotlight doesn't last forever. She hung up. He slid the phone into his pocket. For the first time in weeks, he smiled. Not for revenge. For the chance to rewrite the ending. Emily hadn't slept in 2 days. She sat in her sister's guest room, scrolling the comments on Jake's interview clip. Monster. Liar. Trash. And worse. Her eyes were sunken, her cheekbones sharper. The public hate had become a storm she couldn't outrun. The podcast she launched last year had lost 3 sponsors. Her Instagram DMs were full of fire emojis and vomit reactions. She tossed the phone aside and let her head fall into her hands. Across the room, the baby whimpered in his crib. She got up, held him close, but her arms felt like they belonged to someone else. The crying didn't stop. You're hungry, I know, she whispered. I'm trying to fix it. The formula canister was half empty. She hadn't been outside in 24 hours. When the knock came, she flinched. Her sister entered, arms crossed. You need to get out of here, Em. People recognize you now. This isn't just a scandal, it's dangerous. I didn't mean for any of this, Emily whispered. You slept with his dad, Emily, her sister snapped. People don't just forget that. I was lost, she cried. Jake wasn't. He wasn't there anymore. That doesn't excuse what you did. Emily sank to the floor, holding the baby tighter. I didn't want him to destroy me. Her sister stared at her coldly. Then maybe you shouldn't have given him the reason. She left the room. Emily rocked the baby as he cried against her. But the worst part wasn't the noise. It was the silence afterward. The realization that Jake wasn't even trying to win her back. He was trying to erase her. Jake's inbox had 204 unread messages. But it was the voicemail icon that caught his attention. One new message. From unknown number. Timestamp. 3:03 a.m. He hit play. At first, silence. Then a voice, raspy, older, clear as if it had been recorded yesterday. Jake, if you're hearing this, I'm probably not around anymore. He froze. It was his grandfather. I knew something was wrong with Thomas a long time ago. I never told you. I should have. But I saw things. Heard things. He wasn't just unfaithful, he was reckless. Cold. That charm? It's all fake. Jake sat down on the edge of his bed, phone pressed to his ear like it might vanish. He hurt your mother. Emotionally. Maybe worse. She covered for him. Always did. Maybe out of fear. Maybe out of pride. But son, if you've uncovered something, you follow it. Burn every lie down. Silence again. Then one last line. You deserve better men to learn from. I'm sorry it wasn't me. The message ended. Jake didn't move for a full minute. He set the phone down like it was made of glass. So the poison ran deeper than he thought. And now? He wasn't just fighting to ruin Thomas. He was fighting to understand why no one ever stopped him before. Jake hadn't stepped into his parents' old garage since high school. The house sat empty now. His mom had moved to Florida months before the scandal hit. She hadn't returned a single call since. The key still worked. He pushed the door open and was hit by the scent of old oil and pine cleaner. Dust danced in the afternoon light. He walked past the clutter, boxes, a broken lawn chair, an old fireman's helmet, until he found the workbench. Behind it was the cabinet. Bottom drawer. Locked. He pried it open with a crowbar. The metal screamed, then gave way. Inside, an unmarked black box. Just like the ones Jake used in his own station locker to record training sessions, voice logs, personal rants, sometimes even secret memos. He plugged it into an old laptop. It took a minute, then folders loaded. Dozens of audio files, all time-stamped. Some as recent as last year. Some going back over a decade. He clicked on the first one marked EM_September 2019. Thomas's voice crackled through the speaker, clear, smug, too casual. She says she's scared he'll find out. I told her, don't worry. Jake won't put it together. He never questions what he loves. Another file, MM_February 2015. Different voice. A woman. Quieter. His mother. He says it's the last time, but it never is. I'm tired. But if I leave, he'll make it hell. I can't take that chance. And Jake? He doesn't need this. He still looks at his dad like he's made of steel. Jake closed the laptop, hands shaking. These weren't just affairs. These were patterns. Control. Fear. Thomas didn't just betray him. He built his whole life on silence. And Jake was done being quiet. Jake handed the USB to Detective Marshall across the interrogation table. Marshall plugged it into his laptop, skeptical. You know these aren't admissible unless the people involved knew they were being recorded, right? Jake nodded. I'm not after charges. Not yet. Then what are you after? Jake stared at him, dead serious. Truth. Marshall hit play. Within minutes, the detective's posture changed. He leaned forward. Hit pause. Rewound. That voice, my mother, Jake said. And that one? That's Thomas. The detective tapped the space bar again, listening as Thomas bragged about how easy it was to manipulate her. Marshall sat back, rubbing his face. This guy's a time bomb. He's been one for decades. Jake pulled another folder from his bag. Printouts. Screenshots. Emails. I've connected at least 3 women to him since 2013. 2 were interns in his fire district. 1 filed a report. It got buried. She left town 6 months later. Marshall flipped through the papers. His brow tightened. You want me to dig? I want you to flip the whole F***king ground over, Jake said. The detective nodded slowly. I'll start with the missing report. If I find anything real, he's finished. Jake stood. He's already finished. You're just here to prove it. As he walked out of the precinct, the sun hit his face, warm and sharp. For the first time, he didn't feel like a victim. He felt like a witness turning into a hammer. Jake stood outside his mother's Florida condo, heart pounding. He hadn't spoken to her since the truth broke. She'd ignored every call, every message. But now she was all he had left who could confirm what he already feared. He knocked once. Nothing. Then again. The door creaked open. She stood there, smaller than he remembered. Her hair grayer, face tired. Jake, she said softly. Can I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the AC hummed. The place smelled like lavender and lemon oil. They sat across from each other in silence. She couldn't meet his eyes. Jake placed a flash drive on the table. You lied to me for years. Her lips trembled. I was trying to protect you. From what? The truth? From seeing what kind of man he really was. Tears welled. You worshipped him. I didn't want to take that from you. You should have, Jake said. Because now, I'm taking everything from him. She looked up then. Her eyes wet, but clear. Do what I couldn't. Jake nodded. I already am. He stood to leave, but paused at the door. Did you ever love him? Her voice cracked. I think. I loved who I thought he was. Jake opened the door. Same. He walked into the sunlight, flash drive in his pocket, his past now fully behind him, and his final strike just ahead. Jake sat alone in the dim corner of the production studio lobby, the same one where he dropped the first truth bomb. The glass walls vibrated with the low hum of prep, producers pacing, assistants adjusting lights, microphones being tested. But Jake felt none of it. He was watching a slow-motion video on loop, himself on TV, delivering the line that had broken the internet. Emily, Thomas, I hope you're watching. The network had asked for a follow-up episode, but not to rehash the drama. No, they wanted him to host a roundtable on intergenerational trauma and betrayal. Jake stared at the email header again. Something about the word roundtable made his stomach twist. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Jake Morgan, the voice said. Speaking. This is Danielle. I don't know how to say this, but I think I'm your sister. Silence. Jake's throat locked. What did you say? I'm Thomas's daughter. My mom told me everything after your story went viral. She said she was scared for years. But when she saw you stand up to him, she finally told me the truth. Jake's pulse thundered. I've got proof. A test. Emails. Everything. I didn't know who you were until last week. He stood slowly, his chair scraping behind him. You're sure? He asked. Yes. And Jake? I'm not the only one. Jake's hand shook as he scrolled through the folder Danielle had sent. Screenshots. Legal notices. A DNA test. Thomas had a child in 1996. Hidden behind non-disclosure agreements, hush money, and silence. Danielle was real. And she wasn't the only one. There were 3 half-siblings. All born between 1994 and 2000. All mothered by women connected to Thomas's job, interns, dispatchers, volunteers. Jake stared at the web of documents. This wasn't an affair. This was systemic manipulation. Thomas had built a second life multiple times. Danielle's email was raw, honest. She wanted nothing, no media attention, no money, just connection. Jake called her. Her voice trembled. You don't have to believe me. I just couldn't stay quiet after everything you did. You gave people like me a reason to speak. Jake swallowed hard. I believe you. He walked into his living room, stared at the black and white photo of him and Thomas from his academy graduation. They were smiling, arms around each other. Jake took the frame off the wall, threw it into the trash. Then he made a decision. He wasn't just going to expose what happened. He was going to tear down everything Thomas ever built. The next morning, Jake posted a tweet. Turns out I wasn't an only child. Turns out my dad was a predator hiding in plain sight. Hashtag more to come. Within 10 minutes, it hit trending. Within an hour, his inbox flooded. A producer called. A journalist emailed. A lawyer from the fire department's internal affairs unit asked for a statement. And then, his phone rang again. Private number. He answered. Jake. Thomas's voice growled. What the hell are you doing? Jake stared out the window, calm. I'm doing what you taught me, he said. Facing the fire. I swear to God, don't, Jake snapped. Don't swear on a name you've dragged through every lie. Thomas's breath hitched. You think you're a hero now? Exposing your own blood? Jake stepped out onto his balcony, sun warm on his face. No, he said. I think I'm the cleanup crew after decades of your mess. Thomas was silent. Jake didn't wait for a goodbye. He ended the call. And this time, when he looked in the mirror, he didn't see a victim. He saw a man finally breaking the cycle. Emily sat across from the podcast mic, fingers clenched in her lap. The host, a woman named Lila, gave her the kind of sympathetic smile you usually reserve for widows and refugees. So, Lila said softly, you've been at the center of what some are calling the biggest betrayal scandal of the year. What's your truth, Emily? Emily exhaled shakily. I didn't plan this. I didn't set out to hurt Jake. I loved him. I still do. Lila nodded. But you had an affair with his father. Emily's face twitched. It wasn't an affair. It wasn't romantic. I was vulnerable. I was isolated. Thomas took advantage of that. You're saying you were manipulated? Yes. He was older, respected. He knew exactly what he was doing. I didn't even realize how deep it had gone until it was too late. Emily's voice broke. Her eyes glistened just right. The performance was calculated. Lila leaned in. And what about the child? I thought the baby was Jake's. Truly. I didn't know until after. When the test came, I was already drowning. Emily wiped a tear. I never wanted to be the villain in his story. The producer behind the glass gave a thumbs up. Clean cut. Great tape. After the show, Lila smiled. You did amazing. But in the car, Emily's mask cracked. She looked into the mirror and saw not a victim, not a mother, but a woman unraveling in slow motion. Because no matter what she said on air, Jake knew the real version. And so did she. Jake sat at his desk, digging through his old backup drive again. He'd almost skipped the 2020 folder too far back. But then he saw it. A text thread. Deleted before, now recovered. It was a conversation between Emily and his mother. Emily, he's pulling away from me again. I don't know what to do. His mom, be patient. He's like his father. He bottles things up. Just keep him close. Jake scrolled further. Emily, Thomas says he understands me better than Jake ever did. Sometimes I believe him. His mom, be careful. That man knows how to get what he wants. Always has. Jake's chest tightened. He kept reading. A later message. Emily, I think I've made a mistake. A huge one. His mother's reply. Then stop now. Before Jake finds out. Jake stared at the screen. So she knew. His mother knew something was wrong before he did. And instead of warning him, she told Emily to manage it quietly. Jake pushed away from the desk, breathing hard. The betrayal wasn't just intimate, it was generational. It was baked into the walls of his family. He looked at the old family portrait on the shelf. Everyone smiling, pretending. He picked it up, stared at it for a long second, then dropped it into the trash. Not because he was angry, because it didn't belong in his new world anymore. Jake stepped into his father's house unannounced. Thomas was in the kitchen, pouring coffee like it was any other day. You should have called, Thomas said, not even looking up. Jake walked to the counter, placed a folder down. Thomas glanced at it. What's this? Screenshots. Messages. Backup files. Voices. Yours. Mom's. Emily's. Thomas smirked. You think this is proof? You're still chasing ghosts. Jake didn't blink. I'm building a case. Against what? The past? No. Against you. Thomas finally looked up, eyes cold. You think this changes anything? People don't care about old sins, Jake. They care about results. Reputation. What I built. Jake leaned in. What you built was a lie. Thomas chuckled. You think you're the good guy in this? Jake's voice dropped. No. I just know I'm not you. Thomas sipped his coffee. You keep digging. You'll ruin your name too. Jake smiled. I already gave up that name. He walked toward the door. Thomas called after him. You think this is a game? Jake stopped, hand on the knob. No, he said without turning back. I think you lost a long time ago. Then he walked out. And for the first time, Thomas didn't follow. Later that night, Jake opened a box from his childhood. Inside was a spiral-bound notebook covered in dust, one he hadn't seen since he was maybe 10. He flipped it open, expecting sketches or stories. But what he found were lists. Names. Times. Dates. Notes. He didn't remember writing them. But the handwriting was his. At the top of one page, underlined in pencil, things Dad says that don't feel right. Jake blinked. Below it, in shaky child handwriting, he told Mom not to cry in front of me again. He said if I told anyone what I saw in the shed, he'd take my dog away. Jake's blood ran cold. Another page had a drawing, his dad's silhouette, looming large over a smaller figure. Beneath it, sometimes he looks at me like he hates me. Jake shut the notebook. His entire life, he'd been recording the truth, even before he had the words for it. Now, those pages would speak for the version of himself that had been ignored for years. Not just a victim, not just a survivor, a witness. And now, a weapon. The voice recording from the hard drive kept playing through Jake's laptop speaker. Thomas's voice again, lower this time, harder to hear. You knew what this was. Don't turn on me now. Emily's voice followed, shaken. You said he'd never find out. I still say he won't, unless you screw it up. You told me you loved me. Silence. Then Thomas, I said what I needed to say. Jake sat still, hands pressed together under his chin, elbows on the desk. He'd played the same file 3 times already. Not because he needed confirmation, but because the truth was louder than anything Thomas had ever taught him. There was no affection, no remorse, just manipulation. The call was timestamped 6 weeks before the baby was born. Jake clicked stop, then opened his drive folder and dragged the audio file into a new folder titled Public Release, Final Cut. One by one, he compiled it. The affair confession, the voices, the childhood notebook photos, the anonymous messages from Thomas's other victims, even the audio from his mother's whispered breakdown, it was all going in. He wasn't waiting for the court system to save him. He was going to drop the match himself. The network camera rolled silently. Jake sat in a dark studio, lit only by one overhead spotlight. The producer behind the glass held up 3 fingers. You ready? she said through the intercom. Jake nodded once. Roll sound. Rolling. In, whenever you're ready. He stared into the lens. No paper. No script. Just his truth. My name is Jake Morgan. For years, I thought I had the perfect family. I didn't. He exhaled slowly. I was raised by a man who wore a uniform and carried a legacy. But behind closed doors, he carried something else: control, secrets, and a wake of people he broke along the way. He paused. One of those people was my wife. Another beat. I don't share this for sympathy. I share it because there are other people out there who trusted someone, loved someone, and got destroyed by them. Jake's jaw tightened. This isn't revenge. This is exposure. And when this story ends, I hope someone else hears it and says, that happened to me too. And I'm not crazy. He looked down, then back up. My father didn't just betray me. He betrayed his job, his oaths, his family. And now, he's going to be held accountable. Silence filled the room. The producer's voice crackled through. That's the one. That's the truth people will feel. Jake stood, muscle stiff. It wasn't about closure anymore. It was about legacy and rewriting it. Jake returned home after the shoot to a dark, quiet apartment. He dropped his keys, sat on the edge of his bed, and let the exhaustion bleed out through his limbs. Then his eyes landed on the drawer. Bottom one in the nightstand. The same drawer he hadn't opened in months. His hand hovered, then pulled it open. The pistol lay there. Unloaded, but real. Cold. He stared at it. It had been a backup, insurance for the nights when the silence felt too loud, too final. He picked it up, held it. No emotion. Just wait. His phone buzzed beside him. A message. Danielle, I just wanted to say thank you for not staying silent. You gave me back something I thought I'd never find: my name. Jake set the gun down, closed the drawer, locked it, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel the need to keep it close. The darkness had circled. He'd stood inside it. But now, he was walking straight through it. And he wasn't carrying a weapon anymore. He was one. The coffee shop buzzed with conversation, but Jake's table stayed still. Across from him sat Rachel Vance, investigative journalist, sharp brown eyes, a tablet glowing in her hand. I've reviewed everything, she said, voice calm but firm. This isn't just a family scandal. This is a career takedown. Thomas Morgan's legacy stretches city to city. His connections, his awards. If we publish this right, it'll ripple far. Jake nodded. That's the goal. Rachel leaned in. But Jake, this isn't a revenge piece anymore. You're opening a file on abuse of power, department corruption, and possible cover-ups. You ready for that heat? I've been in fires before, he said. She smirked. Not like this one. Rachel tapped the screen, scrolling. We'll start with the story, your side. Then move to the patterns. Connect the dots. You're not just the center, you're the fuse. Jake finished his coffee. Then light it, he said. Rachel smiled. The first article was already drafted. Headline: The Fire Chief Who Burned Bridges. A son's fight to reveal the truth behind the badge. Rachel slid a manila folder across the cafe table. This just came in from a whistleblower, she said. It's from a sealed personnel file, Thomas's disciplinary report from 1999. Jake opened it. First page, foster care case review. Suppressed report. Second page, incident report, physical threat toward minor. Under investigation. No formal charges filed. His breath caught. Wait, this was buried? Rachel nodded. Intentionally. Internal Affairs closed it within 48 hours. Victim placed into temporary foster care. The child's identity was sealed. Jake flipped through the rest. A blurred-out statement. He threatened me if I ever said anything. Told me no one would believe me anyway. Jake's hands trembled. What year was this? He asked. Rachel replied, 1999. Guess who was working youth fire training that year? Jake leaned back, eyes burning. Jesus. Rachel tapped the folder. There's more. We think this victim is still alive and local. We're trying to reach her. Jake looked up. This man didn't just cheat. He destroyed people, and the system let him do it. Rachel didn't flinch. Then let's destroy the system right back. Jake's phone rang as he stepped out of the cafe. Private number. He answered, voice cautious. Jake Morgan. Jake. The voice was gruff, older, almost shaking. I don't expect you to believe me. But I think I'm your biological father. Jake stopped in his tracks. What? I served with your mother's unit overseas. Thomas wasn't the man she tells people he was. We had a relationship before he forced her out of mine. Jake leaned against a wall. The street noise disappeared. You have proof. I have letters. DNA if you want it. I saw your interview. Saw your face. I had to call. Jake didn't speak. The man continued, if you're not ready, I get it. But I live 2 towns over. My name's Sam Beckett. And I've been waiting 34 years to meet my son. Silence stretched. Jake looked up at the sky, cold wind brushing against him. Send the letters, he said. We'll go from there. He hung up, pulse pounding. Another piece of the truth had cracked through. Not just about Thomas, but about himself. The envelope came the next morning. No return address. Just thick, weathered paper. Inside were 6 handwritten letters, each dated between 1989 and 1992. Each signed, Sam. Jake read them one by one. They spoke of love, regret, a desperate man begging to see his son. Letters returned unopened. Some never even mailed. One line stopped him cold. Your mother loved you so fiercely, Jake. She was willing to disappear just to keep you safe. Jake wiped his face. Not because he was broken, because part of him, some silent, angry part, finally felt seen. The final letter ended simply, if you ever read this, just know, I never stopped looking. Jake folded the letters carefully. For the first time in months, he wasn't carrying just pain. He was carrying origin. And now, he wasn't just reclaiming his story. He was rewriting it. Jake stood in the county records office, file in hand. The DNA tech had called him personally. There's a discrepancy, she'd said. Now the papers confirmed it. The original paternity test? Tampered. Marked with falsified labels. Jake read the second, uncorrupted result. Paternal match, 99.95%. Jake Morgan, his knees went weak. The baby was his. Not Thomas's. Not anyone else's. His. The lie had run so deep, so far, even he had believed it. Jake rushed to his lawyer's office, file in hand. New evidence, he said, breath short. The baby's mine. His lawyer scanned the results. Jesus. Emily faked the test? Jake nodded. Or someone did it for her. The lawyer stared at him. This changes everything. Jake looked out the window, jaw tight. No, he said. It just brought everything into focus. Jake stared at the lab door, heart hammering. He hadn't been nervous like this in years, not in front of fire, not even in court. But this was different. He stepped inside, holding the swab kit under his arm. The nurse gave him a soft smile. Just you today? Jake nodded. And my son. He's in the car. I wanted to do this the right way. No mistakes. They took the samples quickly. Quietly. Jake didn't even look at Emily. She sat across the waiting room, arms crossed, sunglasses on inside like a celebrity hiding shame. She hadn't said a word since the lawyer's discovery. When she signed the paperwork, her hands were shaking. Jake finally spoke as he passed her. Why? Emily didn't look up. I thought I could fix it. By erasing me? No, she whispered. By keeping what mattered. Jake paused. Then maybe you should have started by keeping your vows. He walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click, but it sounded like a hammer slamming through years of lies. It took 72 hours. Jake didn't sleep. Barely ate. The phone rang late afternoon. The voice was calm, professional. Mr. Morgan, the test is complete. The child is biologically yours. 99.95% match. Jake didn't move. He sat there, staring at the table in front of him. The silence in the apartment was suddenly deafening. He whispered to himself, he's mine. For a moment, he felt everything at once. Rage at the lie. Joy at the truth. Grief for the time lost. Then his mind shifted. What happens next? He asked the woman on the phone. You'll need to petition the court to restore legal father status. Given the new evidence, it should move quickly. He nodded. Thanks. He hung up, then stood slowly. It wasn't over, but it was finally real. He had a son. And now? He was going to fight for him. It started with a knock. Emily opened the door, expecting the mailman. Instead, 2 officers. Emily Moore? She blinked. Yes. You're under arrest for obstruction of legal documentation, evidence tampering, and parental fraud. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Handcuffs clicked behind her back. As she was walked past the neighbors, head down, a single voice shouted from a second-floor window. Shame. Emily flinched. She sat in the back of the cruiser, hands shaking. Her lawyer hadn't warned her it would happen this fast. But Jake had moved quietly, filed everything, made it airtight. Now she was going to face a judge not as a mother, but as a criminal. And she knew, whatever pity the world had once offered her, it was gone. All she had left was consequence. The prison visitation room was cold, quiet. Jake sat at the table, waiting. Emily entered in a jumpsuit, hair tied back, eyes tired. She sat down slowly. "Why are you here?" she asked. Jake leaned forward. "Closure." She scoffed. "You already won." "No," Jake said. "Winning would be forgetting you ever existed. I'm just here to make sure you understand what you did." "I know," she muttered. Jake's tone stayed steady. "Do you? You didn't just cheat. You didn't just lie. You tried to erase me from my own son's life." She looked away. Jake continued, voice sharp. "But I'm still here, and he's still mine." Tears welled in her eyes. "Tell him I'm sorry," she whispered. Jake stood. "No," he said. "You'll tell him one day. That's not mine to carry." He walked out without looking back. Behind him, Emily broke. But Jake didn't stop. Some closures come with a slammed door. Others, with silence. Jake watched the headline ripple across every major outlet like a wildfire. Fire Chief Thomas Morgan under investigation for historical abuse. Affair cover UPS. Multiple victims emerge. AS Son reveals decades of deception. Cable news anchors debated. Podcasts dissected. TikTok was flooded with stitch videos of Jake's original interview, now framed as a cultural reckoning. Reporters knocked on doors. Anonymous sources leaked department emails. Internal affairs went into lockdown mode. But it wasn't just the media that reacted. The department stripped Thomas of his honorary titles. His legacy plaques were removed from the firehouse wall. He was suspended without pay, pending criminal review. His pension froze. His name, once spoken with respect, now carried venom. Jake sat at home, watching a segment unfold on live TV. A victim spoke, face blurred. He said no one would believe me, that he had friends in high places. But Jake? Jake made me feel seen. Jake muted the volume. He didn't smile, didn't cheer, because none of it was victory. It was just justice, finally showing up late, but loud. The courtroom was quiet as Jake sat beside his attorney. Across the aisle, the hospital lab's legal team looked rattled. The falsified paternity test had opened a storm. Jake had filed a civil suit for emotional distress, malpractice, and data tampering. The lab, trying to avoid a media circus, had offered a settlement. Now the amounts sat on a folded paper in front of him. Jake opened it. "Read the number." 7 figures. Tax-free. Confidentiality included. His lawyer leaned in. "We can counter for more. But it's solid." Jake didn't blink. "I don't want silence. I want accountability." The judge entered. Everyone rose. Jake whispered to his lawyer, "Take the deal. But no NDA. I keep the right to speak." His lawyer nodded. Hours later, outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Jake stepped to the mic. "I didn't fight for money. I fought for my name. My rights. My son." He held up the court document. "This isn't the end. This is how we make sure no one else gets buried under someone else's lie." Flashbulbs went off. But Jake didn't flinch. His voice steady. His face unshaken. The nursery was quiet again, but different this time. No more ghosts. Just Jake, kneeling beside a toddler crib as his son gripped the rail and smiled. Jake smiled back, his eyes tired but peaceful. A social worker sat in the corner, clipboard in hand. "He's comfortable with you. That's important." "I've been with him every visit," Jake said. "Every minute they allowed." She nodded. "The court restored your parental rights. But given the legal back and forth, we're offering a clean path forward." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What kind of path?" "Adoption," she said. "Full legal and custodial claim. No shared rights with the mother." Jake looked at his son, his actual son. He didn't hesitate. "Draw up the papers." The social worker smiled. "That's what I hoped you'd say." Jake leaned in closer to the crib, holding his son's tiny hand. "You and me now, kid," he whispered. "No lies. No games. Just us." The baby giggled, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Jake didn't feel like a man chasing revenge. He felt like a father building a future. Jake stood just outside the old firehouse, the same one he'd trained in, bled in, laughed in. The city had removed Thomas Morgan's nameplate from the dedication wall last week. Jake hadn't seen it yet. He'd waited until the building was closed, late at night, when silence covered everything like dust. He stepped inside with quiet footsteps. The engine bay still smelled like oil and sweat. Faint traces of smoke clung to the lockers, like memories that refused to fade. He walked the hall slowly, hand grazing the walls. When he reached the honor board, once led by his father's photo, he paused. There was a gap now, an empty space where Thomas's face used to hang. Jake stared at the blank spot for a long time. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something new. A photo. Small. Framed. It was a picture of his son, standing in the backyard, clutching a plastic fireman's hat and smiling up at the camera. Jake placed it right in the middle of the gap. No plaque. No words. Just future replacing fiction. He turned to leave, boots echoing off concrete. No applause. No medals. Just closure. The real kind. The sun was setting as Jake stepped into the cemetery, a soft orange glow stretching across the grass. He walked past rows of names until he reached the stone marked Margaret L. Morgan, wife, mother, fighter. His mother. She'd passed quietly just 2 months before, a stroke, they said. Jake hadn't spoken to her since their last visit in Florida. Still, he came now. He knelt beside the headstone. "I did it," he said. "I told the truth. All of it." The breeze stirred. "I wish you had too." Jake paused, voice lower. "But I get it now. I know why you didn't. He scared you. He broke you." He placed a small envelope at the base of the stone, one of the letters from Sam, her first love. The real one. "I thought you deserved to read at least one." He stood. "And Mom, your grandson's gonna grow up safe. Loved. Free." He lingered for a moment, then turned. As he walked back to the car, the sky behind him burned orange and pink, like a quiet fire that didn't destroy, just warmed. Jake didn't look back. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't need to anymore. The diner was small, off Route 6, quiet, barely anyone inside. Jake sat at the window booth, fingers curled around a hot cup of coffee, heart pacing slower than usual but no less heavy. The door opened. An older man stepped in, graying beard, work boots, denim jacket. He scanned the room, then locked eyes with Jake. Sam Beckett. They nodded without words, like two men who knew how much time had been lost and how little time cared about apologies. Sam sat down, nervous but composed. "Didn't think you'd actually show." Jake stared at him. "Neither did I." A pause. "I read the letters," Jake added. "All of them." Sam lowered his gaze. "I mailed a dozen more that never came back. I figured your mother had her reasons. I never stopped hoping." Jake nodded slowly. "You should have tried harder." Sam swallowed. "I know." Silence settled between them. Honest. Heavy. Not awkward. Just real. "I don't want anything from you," Sam said. "No money. No titles. Just the chance to know the boy I never got to hold." Jake looked out the window. "I'm not a boy anymore," he said. "I can see that." Jake pulled out his phone. Opened a photo. His son, wrapped in a blanket, fast asleep on Jake's chest. "This is my son," he said. "And if you want to know me, it starts with knowing him." Sam smiled, eyes welling. "That's more than I deserve." Jake leaned back, exhaled. "Maybe," he said, "but I'm done letting men define me by what they ruined. Now, it's about what I rebuilt." Outside, the wind picked up. But in that booth, time slowed. And for once in his life, Jake didn't feel like a product of broken men. He felt like his own. 2 years later, the book hit #1 on the nonfiction bestseller list. Title: Smoke Doesn't Lie. Author: Jake Morgan. He didn't write it to make money. He wrote it for his son. For the victims. For anyone who ever doubted what they saw with their own eyes because someone louder told them to forget it. The documentary came next. Then the speaking tour. People lined up for hours just to tell him, "You told my story. You made me feel seen." You gave me the courage to leave. Jake never called himself a hero. He wasn't one. He was a man who survived the fire, walked back into it, and dragged the truth out by its neck. His son, now 3, ran across the living room, tiny firefighter boots on, a plastic walkie-talkie clipped to his belt. "Dad, there's a fire upstairs," he shouted, laughing. Jake caught him mid-sprint and swung him around, heartful. "No worries, buddy. We got this." Laughter filled the room. No more lies. No more ghosts. Just peace and purpose. Jake sat on the porch that night, watching the stars, beer in hand. He picked up his phone, opened the camera. He stared into the lens for a long second, then hit record. "I've told my truth. Now I want yours." A pause. "Have you ever uncovered a secret so dark it changed everything you thought was real?" Another beat. "And if you did, what did you do with it?" He leaned in. "Let me know in the comments. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from right now?" A quiet smile. "Oh, and if this story meant something to you, don't just like or scroll. Tap that heart, hit subscribe, and share it with one person who needs to hear that healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from truth." Jake looked up at the stars once more. Then he set the phone down. And finally, he exhaled. Free. What's your story? Have you ever faced a truth so big it shattered the life you thought you had? Drop your answer in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. And hey, if this hit you even a little bit, don't just scroll. Share it. Someone out there needs this more than you know.